The Mist, directed by Frank Darabont, is an adaptation of The Mist by Stephen King. So let's get to the point, shall we? The Mist is not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I am willing to accept that The Mist is most definitely an impressive movie, but it is far from perfect. So I'm going to be exaggerating the flaws of the movie to prove my points. Yes, I did say exaggerating because it has but only a few flaws that is keeping it away from its potential. But before we get to the negatives, let's talk about the positives. I like how the mist acted as a cloak for the monsters. I like some of the monsters, especially the Cthulhu ripoff. I like the terrifying atmospheric nature built around the helpless people who were trapped in the shopping mall. And I absolutely loved the ending, but I will get to it later. So let's talk about the negatives. If you didn't know, I am not a huge fan of the Bible. Despite having funny stories and fascinating allegories, the Bible being accurate within this cosmic nightmare implies that canonically true within this universe. This is portrayed through Mrs. Carmody. Mrs. Carmody, who is a religious nut,
Help. Please. People. Let me. Let me preach your word.
escapes the weird locusts and predicts exactly how people will die because she talks to God. This ruins the cosmic horror faster than a meteor that entered the Earth's atmosphere. First of all, Mrs. Carmody is probably meant to be seen as an allegory for the truth, because the truth might be unlikable and irritating, but ultimately it is the truth. Isn't that allegory fantastic?
No, God!
Even though I agree with the message being portrayed here, I believe the use of the Bible was wrong because the Bible is the exact opposite of cosmic horror. The Bible says there is an all powerful God who created us and looks after us. Well, the argument could be made that God is not all good and that he plays with humanity to fulfill his sadistic desires. It still makes human beings special because if God is real, the universe is created for us and we are the God's chosen race. So, in typical Stephen King fashion, he fails trying to create a thought provoking allegory. But that's not all. The existence of God also exponentially reduces the value of the ending because after they die, they either go to heaven or hell. But to Stephen King's credit, he didn't write out prove that God exists within this universe. But there is a few more weaknesses I must point out. What might they be? First off, the father of the family is a righteous family man who tries everything he can to help people. I mean, he went to help a man when a tentacle was pulling him away, while the others were utterly speechless. So I must ask, why is he special? How is he so courageous and selfless? Because if you aren't emotionally paralyzed in front of such horrors, you are definitely not human. Besides, what crime did he commit to witness such devastating punishments? Most of Stephen King movies are, well, not adapted very well. I mean, except for The Shining, I guess, The Shining took many creative liberties to improve its story. Because Stephen King is, well, not very good at cosmic horror. I mean, he can't even decide an end for his own story. If you create something that is beyond human comprehension, if you create something that defies all logic and rationality, you can still call it cosmic horror. But if you let it be defeated by a bunch of kids, that means you lost. That means this is no longer cosmic horror. This is simply a coming of age story. Here's the thing, most people think cosmic horror is simply an genre that exists to project well the characters' insecurities as creatures that are beyond human comprehension. Well, that is not. Cosmic horror is a subgenre of the horror genre which relies on the fact that bad things happen to good people, and that's not all. I mean, anything can happen anytime, anywhere, because despite humans trying to make sense of reality itself, reality is simply an illusion which we created, so we won't go insane. Cosmic horror ignores reality itself and creates something that is beyond reality. I mean, the decision to not include a face as an example. Well, the mist is not an entity on itself. It's simply something that exists and provides a medium for the monsters to hide. That should be given credit. But still, I have seen movies that have done it better. I know people are not going to agree with me on this, but The Void is much better than The Mist. Why do I say this? Well, here's the reason. The Void also deals with such similar matters, but unlike The Mist, these characters are developed well, and besides, they act like humans in front of eldritch horrors that are beyond their comprehension. Yet, the endings are extremely similar. But despite me liking the ending of The Mist, I didn't really like much of it. I mean, I get the idea of philosophical conflict, and yes, it is true. When an apocalyptic scenario comes around, people turn to religion for hope and guidance. Speaking of apocalyptic scenarios, I mean, a virus is sweeping out the human race slowly these days. I mean, the coronavirus is not supposed to be a plague. Well, it will die out eventually, and people will forget about it very soon. Don't worry about it and stop fear mongering. This is not the apocalypse. And by the way, I'm a nihilist, so trust me when I say it. This is not the apocalypse. That is tackled in a much more magnificent way in The Mist. That must be given credit as well. But other people, well, the child, the father, and the black guy, other people just act like NPCs, doing nothing except supporting, I guess. Despite me complaining about The Mist, I must admit, it is a great movie, as I mentioned before. But because of its flaws, I really had a hard time enjoying it. But who am I to say so, right? So go watch The Mist and The Void and decide which one is better. And trust me, The Void is better. I'm so proud of myself for not mentioning H.P. Lovecraft this episode. Oh damn it.